Growing weary of running from room to room, practicing one-tooth insurance-driven dentistry? Then stay tuned for the latest episode of The Lionhearted, where Dr. Stephen Rasner will hand you the blueprint for what many call the gold standard of general practice dentistry.
Hi everyone, it's Dr. Steve Rasner again, and I have some exciting news. Here's what's exciting. First of all, I've been doing these podcasts for about 1 month, and I said at the beginning, I'll continue to do them if I feel like I'm resonating with somebody, if somebody's listening. You know, I'm a full-time working clinician, like most of you listening, which I would hope would be the very reason you're listening to me or eventually tune in to what I have to offer. I have absolutely no agenda 38 years into this career other than to think I do have some worthwhile information that can help a whole bunch of you. So the exciting news for me is I have about 160 of you tuning in to about each one of my episodes. And now I have 9 countries listening. And I don't really know where this is going, but I'm starting to get some emails. And by the way, it's important for me to have you email me and tell me you like this or want to hear this or that from my point of view. Because I really don't have any intention in the beginning, I don't know what the beginning is going to be defined as, is having other guests than myself and perhaps some of my staff members. So my email is very simple and it's laughable, I've been told. It's drrasner@aol.com. Dr. Rasner, DrRasner @AOL.com. And it would be worth its weight in gold if you drop me just a quick email. In fact, whenever I lecture around the United States and abroad, I always tell my audience to email that address and have me send you the stuff. Now, the stuff is 4 to 5 emails that cover a range of my oral sedation protocol, how to get patients out of network into your office, how to get paid up front, which I think is very important. So all these things. So I'm going to begin my podcast, because I'm a rookie at this, moving forward, giving out you my email and hope to hear from you. So far, I've heard from a whopping 1 of you. That's right, 1 of you. I wish I could think of your name this second, because you're like that dollar. You're like that dollar bill that I think you get your first day in business and you put it up on the wall. So thank you, whoever that was. And please, seriously, let me know if this helps. That's the only way I'll continue. As you can see from my background, those of you that are looking, it is that time of year. It's the holiday season. And I don't know if you're supposed to say those kind of things as a podcaster, but I'm going to tell you that because I may not be the best podcaster over here, but I'm sure going to rank in the top of honesty. So on that subject, I'm going to switch a little bit from my last several podcasts, which I'd love to go back to, and I will. I've talked about what I think is the most important thing in your cornerstones of long-term success of a general practice in 2018, and that would be getting patients to want the work that you're recommending. I mean, what could be more important than that? Trust me, and forgive me if I've said this before, but I'm sure there is a plethora of amazing clinicians out there who may be on the verge, on the wall of burnout, because they're not getting those patients to understand and vet. And it is a very difficult skill set to develop very early on. I mean, some of you are just people persons, and that's why you're so good at it right out of the chute. But most of us are not. And so I've spent 4 episodes at least on case acceptance, and I have an abundance of written information regarding that. And we certainly are going to come back to that. But I'm going to switch gears on you a little bit today. And I want to talk to you about something that I don't think is talked about very much. And that is what you can draw upon to motivate yourself to aspire to these levels of excellence that you've heard of famous clinicians around the industry that they've achieved, including myself. And I think it's important that you know that you don't have to be ranked first in your class, especially the story that I have to tell, which would take more than one episode and will, and I will sprinkle them in between the others, I think is very embracing for the average clinician. Because in dental school, that's exactly what I was. I'm going to share with you today the things. I know right now some of you are going to the gym, and maybe some of you are on a walk around the community where you live, and maybe you're plugged into me right now, or maybe you're even watching on YouTube. But I want to reach out to you today in the short time that I have and try to give you some inspiration. I've been told in the 20 plus years I've been a speaker, from all the emails that I've gotten, inspired and got a kick in my pants, and all those things are things that I hear over and over again. So I think it's important to step out a little bit in these podcasts and share that kind of information with you. So allow me, if you will. This is what I want to begin with. I want to tell you what I say probably in the opening 2 minutes of probably every presentation I've ever given. And that line is, you don't have to be a superstar to be a superstar. You just have to want it more. And you have to be willing to outwork everybody else. And I take them back to 1979. When I was a senior in dental school. And this is how I say it. I say, I show a picture of myself up on the screen. I say, that guy spent the past 4 years getting up early, going to bed late, working every weekend, because he was determined to be the number one ranked student in his class. And when those final rankings came out in May of 1980, yours truly was ranked number one. 157. And of course they all crack up. And it's very embracing, and I do it on purpose because, well, first of all, it's true. And it's not true because I goofed off. It's true because I did go to the University of Pennsylvania from 1976 to 1980. And those guys were damn smart. And I was a psych major in Rutgers College, and they were science majors. So I was getting blasted, like many of you, with 10 or 11 physiology courses and histology courses. Remember, first year in dental school? Anatomy. I got blown out of the water. I was a psych major that took the minimum requirements to get into dental school. And so before I came up for air, I was in the bottom fifth of my class. And, that's just the way it went for me. So what happens? Because of that, I had no post-grad residencies offering me anything. Of course, they're not going to offer the bottom fifth of the class a residency. I don't blame them. So what did I do? I went back to my hometown in southern New Jersey to practice with my father, who, God bless his soul, was a very good dentist, but he was mom and pop. Pretty much. In today's world of implant dentistry and bone augmentations and all the things that go with what we call the super generalist, I don't think he was in that category, whatever that category might have been back in 1980, but he was good and had a decent practice. And I had to go back there because nobody else, quite honestly, would take me. But the problem is that the town, that's the town I was raised in, kind of collapsed in 1981, the year after I went back there, because the largest glass factory in the area of southern Jersey closed. So here I am, ranked in the bottom of my class, back in the town I didn't want to really be in, to be quite honest with you, the town I grew up with, that I was very cognizant that was changing, and pretty, not feeling too good about my skill set or my self-esteem. Okay, and that is going to be one of many, many setbacks that this clinician faced, and was still able to achieve a level of, and trust me, when I get to the other setbacks, the one I just told you about, the one of going to a good school and not having fared so well, is the least of the setbacks I would encounter. So those of you listening right now that may be able to relate to that, you thought everybody else was smarter than you, or maybe you still think that. Let me give you a really cool thing that a lot of us take for granted. And that cool thing is that because you are in dentistry, and I don't think this applies in general medicine, we can actually train ourselves to become incredibly competent at I know you know this, but you need to hear this again. You can become incredibly competent in a multitude of specialty skills without actually being a specialist. You can't do that as a primary care physician, but you can in dentistry. And we all know that generalist. There's Lincoln Harris from Australia, who I happen to know, who is a superstar of GPs as I know it. And I know there are literally thousands of others in our profession. Somebody that's phenomenal, is good or better than some endodontist at endodontics, or ortho, or surgical skills as well. So what I did, and now the first thing I want you, starting with this particular podcast, to ask me going forward, is I want you to ask me in particular to send you what I'm focused on. And this one is my recommended residency. You see, I have all these things typed out for you. I did the research and reviewed all the courses I took in my career. And what would I take today? What would I take in the 2018, 19, to 20 years if I was starting over? In fact, I wrote an article, which I'll share during the podcast of the future, called 8 Things I Would Do If I Started Over on Monday. And some of them are the same, and many of them have changed. But I want you to ask me about the education. And what you need to do, those of you right now in a small town in Norway, a little bug tussle town in Germany, or stuck in the Midwest of the United States in a not so glamorous big city, you need to understand that you can totally change your skill set. And what you need to do is consider what you're doing right now as a residency. Even though you're not in a residency, even though you're working maybe 2 or 3 jobs to pay off those debts that you got in dental school, the only thing that's going to stop you is excuses. That's it. Or yourself. You've got to want it bad, man. You've got to want it more. Listen, all you got to do is look at some of the best athletes in the world. Yes, there's a couple exceptions of freaks that are born with amazing skills, and maybe they don't have to work as hard as the others. But my stars and my heroes in life, are, I live right outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and we just picked up Jimmy Butler for the Philadelphia 76ers. Jimmy Butler is one of the top probably 6 to 8 players in the NBA who was not drafted in the top 2, 3, or 4 like so many other studs. He was drafted mid or late in the first round, and he worked his butt off to become who he is today. That's the guy I want on my team. That's who I want you to be. That's who I am. I'm telling you something. What I did and what you should do is you set up, I used to do this every September and every February or January. I would set up my course schedule. And how I did it is I would take a curriculum, a continuum, excuse me, a course that had many components to it. I remember the very first one I took was 1980, probably 84. It was a 3-year periodontal program. I didn't go back to perio grad school. I took a continuum. And so I would recommend you always be in a continuum. And if there's one thing, and this is the voice of another conversation, that I'd like you, if you have to borrow money, then borrow the money. Don't borrow the money to get a fancy car. Don't borrow the money for fancy dental equipment that you can't afford yet. But it is okay from this clinician, from your advisor, for those of you that like my voice, from this particular mentor, it is okay to borrow money for education because the payoff is going to be huge for you. I'd much rather you do that, and live modestly in your home and with your cars and whatever else you're spending money on. Invest in yourself, and you do that through CE. And then you take one constant continuum. And if you go back and you ask me for my recommendations, of course, on my email, drrasner@aol.com, of course I'm going to do that for you. I'm going to give you literally the continuums I would take and at what year. I'm going to give you years 1 through 4. I'm not going to give it to you forever. I'm saying I'm going to give you a good start. And just as an aside, I don't want to keep you in suspense. I'm going to tell you right now, the 3 skills, and I've mentioned this in a very early podcast, but the 3 skills that could turn your practice around the quickest would be getting an oral sedation permit. So go back to my oral sedation podcast. It is, without a doubt, the most impactful skill set that you will ever acquire. And guess what else? It's not even a skill set. It's really a permit. What do I mean by that? I have provided oral sedation in my practice. And by the way, the oral sedation protocol that I will give you, if you write to me, I'll give that to you also. Or go back to the second podcast and it says oral sedation. Is a cocktail that most of you have not heard of, and it combines Benadryl, Atarax, and Triazolam, and it is lights out, safe, lights out, predictable, overcomes patients with phobias of gagging, to the sound, to the noise, to the entire thing. I don't care who's in front of you. I don't care what their negative prior dental experience has been. My sedation protocol, which was of mine, I got it from an amazing dentist 25 years ago from Indiana, named Dr. John Hoare. And he's an amazing dentist. Why this protocol isn't more well known, I just do not know. It is not to be confused with the DOCS, the DOCS protocol, very popular in the United States. I'm not saying anything negative about it. I'm just telling you, I have used multiple combinations and it is powerful. So the first thing I'm telling you isn't even a skill set. It's a permit that you need to get because each state has a different requirement to allow you to get that. In some states, you have to get an IV. You have to go through IV sedation. Not many, but there's a couple states in the United States that make you do that. In most states, it is 60 hours of CE in recommended courses by your board, state board of dentistry. And most of them are going to be what you expect them to be. They're going to be in the pharmaceuticals of the drugs and CPR and advanced life support and things like this. So here's the next deal. I'm going to move on in a few minutes, but if you're going to go through this, and I got to tell you something, and there's a lot of powerful reasons, not just because I do it, that it can help any dental practice. Most of which because it always works. So the first time you do it, you're as good as me after, 22 years of doing this. Now, that's not true of any other skill I could give you. And we don't all achieve, excel with these. If we all took the same endo continuum or implant continuum, naturally, we all develop our skills at different rates, but not with oral sedation, because there really is no skill set. It's really a matter of selecting the right patients and maintaining protocols to keep a safe record. I am proud to tell you that in 22 years, I want you to think about this, in 22 years of doing this type of sedation, I have never had one incident. That is a very hard thing to look you in the camera and tell you truthfully. I have never had one foul, awkward, clumsy. I couldn't wake them up. I had to call 911. Nothing. So be sure to reach out for me for that. Now, if you're going to do that, the second skill set for sure would be learning how to take out teeth atraumatically with the expectation that that patient may get implants, which is how you should always think, in my opinion, because that's going to help you preserve bone. It's going to lead you into the need and requirement to know how to graft bone. And learning how to extract teeth and do the things I just alluded to is something you can do. You can't learn all the grafting techniques and all the multiple biomaterials that you need to know, or all the suturing techniques. You can't learn that in a couple weekends, but you can get a huge majority. I don't know what the percent really is, but I think I can safely tell you 80% of the skill set to atraumatically remove almost any tooth in the mouth, except I'm not including wisdom teeth, because I'm not a big advocate. Even if some of you listening right now have amazing third molar skills, in my model of success for the general dentist, taking wisdom teeth out is not on the list. And the reason is this: there's an enormous difference in the safety anatomy between the third and the second lower molars, and for that matter, even between the first and second maxillary molars. And the return on investment is just not big enough for me to have you. I don't care if you've done 500 in a row without incident. Over the long run, I don't think any of us are going to argue that there is greater increase of risk, and I don't want you to be and you don't need to do that. There's abundant teeth. And by the way, you can't just send one of the things you want for long-term success is going to have good, positive relationships with the people and the other health professionals in your community. Now, sometimes that's an impossibility. But, you can't send your oral surgeon only horizontally impacted third molars and expect him to help you out when you get stuck with a tooth that you can't get out gracefully. I mean, come on. You got to be immense. You got to be real. And so, a lot of oral surgeons certainly consider a big part of their circle of skills that they deliver on a daily basis to be third molar extractions. Okay, and then the third thing I'm going to tell you, and I'm talking about your skill sets needed. So I said oral sedation, atraumatic extractions. By the way, and I don't think I've ever said this on a podcast yet, but I do have a hands-on live patient in New Jersey atraumatic extraction course I give 3 times a year. It doesn't matter what state you're in. You can come to New Jersey under my auspices and practice skill sets on patients I have selected for you. Not pig jaws, not sheep heads, patients. So you can reach out to my email for that at drrasner@aol.com. And then the third skill is this. If you're going to go to the trouble of having an oral sedation permit, if you're going to get into trouble of perfecting for the next couple years atraumatic extractions, bone grafting skills, suturing techniques, that's what I mean by a couple years, then you may as well incorporate the all-important implant surgical and prosthetic skill sets. Because the implant surgical skill sets go hand in hand with atraumatic extractions and bone grafting. But, of course, there's an abundance of other things as GPs, right, that we need to learn. But I told you I would focus on motivation in this podcast, and I've gotten off the track with the skill sets. Here's what I want to tell you. I am telling you, I wasn't just ranked in the bottom of my class. I deserve to be there. I don't know. I just didn't get it as quick as the next guy did. That being said, I believe I can look you in the eye today, and I believe I can deliver a pretty handsome array of skills as a GP that would put me in a special category. And I think I have those skills. I don't think. I only have those skills because I dedicated a lifetime to continuing education. And I don't mean parties at CE. I mean, I took CE like it was a job. And I would have a continuum going on every year. And then I would filter that in sometimes. I mean, I took 300 and 350 hours of education for at least 10 to 15 years. That's 350 hours of CE through the Academy of General Dentistry and the ADA. And they were serious learning hands-on courses. And today, here's the beautiful thing, man. Today, you have abundant, so many more abundant opportunities for education than we did just 10 years ago, and certainly when I started this all 30 some years ago. So you need to start. You need to stop saying that I made some bad choices and I'm stuck in this part of the country and I can't get it. Yes, you can. You can change anything you want, and you know it if you put your mind to it. And it begins with you empowering yourself with skills. You can't wish for those skills. And when I started training, I went out to Frank Spear and John Coys. Those of you in the United States who knows who they are, Frank Spear and John Coys had an office together in the state of Washington. I'm in Philadelphia at the time, really southern New Jersey, and I made something like 18 trips from Philadelphia to the state of Washington to learn everything I can learn about facial aesthetics and crown and bridge training, and back then orthodontic extrusion and the concept of a ferrule, and all the brilliant things taught to me by John and Frank and a host of others, Pete Dawson. I mean, I could go on and on and on with this, and you'll find these names or even more current names today when you reach out to me. That's all free, of course. I mean, I'm not selling you anything. You take my course in New Jersey, yes, I'm going to sell you that. That's not free. Okay, but anything else, I'm here, and it's going to be worth, by the way, every penny. I make sure that I represent myself and my name well with anything I put out there when it comes to products you reach out for to me. So I want to wrap this part up by saying this. I did this on purpose. The primary first step is to increase your personal skill set. And look, I don't care if you're 70 and you still love dentistry, or you're a fourth-year dental student right now, or you've been out for about 3 years. I am telling you, I took a practice in an area of the United States that is ranked by USA Today as the second worst place to live in the United States of America. That was about 10 years ago. And I know some dentists in my area may be listening to this and, will send me negative vibes. because I'm talking negatively about the area in which I practice. I wish it wasn't like that. I wish I knew what it was like to practice in a little bit more of an not even upscale, just middle of the road area. Why would I say that? Because it becomes incredibly challenging to take somebody that's having trouble paying their mortgages, paying their car, putting food on the table, and making ideal, or even not even ideal, just better oral health a priority. That is something maybe some of you haven't thought about, but that's the true challenge when you're in an area that is economically challenged itself. And you better develop, and the best thing about developing skill sets is you get tied into other practices and habits of other successful dentists. You got to remember what you chose to do, what I chose to do, is almost by definition, we're isolationists. We're by ourselves too much. So it becomes important, as anybody and any business can tell you, to network. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So you don't have to think of what is the best way to really attract new patients in 2018 is different than it was in 2008, for example. Using social media platforms today, the best way to hire staff, the best way to motivate staff, the best way to bond and trust with somebody who's never met you before in the first 5 minutes. These are all things that I'm going to be bringing up in the next few podcasts, and I'll try my best not to get tied down with subjects. I know I got a little bit tied down today with the skill set of oral sedation, atraumatic extractions, and implant surgical skills, but it just fit in at that point. Anyway, this is fun for me. I hope you stay tuned and keep listening, and be sure to write to me at Dr. Rasner at AOL, and see you on my next podcast.